Hello,
How are you?
I'm good. You're in Israel?
I am.
Oh,
No,
very nice, very nice.
not so nice here. Not so nice.
No?
No, the mood of the country is terrible. Terrible.
Oh, that's too bad.
Harold,
Yeah,
Yeah, hi, Ernie.
irony.
happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Happy Rosh Chodesh from there. So,
Susie told me to tell you, Susie and I went to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art today.
Oh, okay.
Ed Rusche,
Yeah, Ed Ruscha. Yeah, I saw it when it was in New York. It's amazing.
she said, oh, Harold's going to know this.
Yeah, yeah.
With
I saw it in New York.
the
Yeah, the
standard
Standard Oil at
oils.
the gas station. Yeah, yeah,
There's a whole exhibit there.
yeah. I know. It's this whole retrospective.
Whole retrospective
He
is
came here like in the early '60s. He's like in his almost 90 years old. He's still painting. Yeah, he's
right.
very iconic. He had, the words.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
words and
yeah,
those
yeah, very
standard.
iconic stuff. Yeah, from Oklahoma. Were we holding?
I think we're on 69, Samech Tes. We did the Mishnah, now we're doing the Gemara. Samech Tes Amud Aleph.
Okay. Okay.
Bava Basra, 69. Novi Shir tonight is 8 o'clock.
Right.
We said that when you sell a field, the stones in the field that are needed for the field are sold with the field. Stones that are not needed for the field are not. We don't know what these kind of stones we're talking about. So the Gemara wants to know, Maya Avonim Shem Letzorcha. What is a stone that the field needs? Haka Targimu Avnei da Achba.
Oh.
These are the sheaves. So in order for them not to fly away, they would, I guess, take a bunch of sheaves and they would weigh them down with a stone on top of them so they wouldn't blow away. So these are stones that would be needed for the field. Ula Amar Avonim Asduros, get Avonim Tsuvuros Legadir. That means eventually a fence is going to need to be built around the field. So they have to gather stones before they build the fence. So those are the stones that they're referring to. The Gemara says, "Vatani Rabki Avonim Tzuvuros Legader." Even if they're not necessarily lined up in an order. Tani Sturos means you have to amend what Rav Chia's Bryce has said. We're talking about they're lined up and organized for a fence. Okay. Hacha Targibu Avne the Achpa, that here we translated Avne the Achpa, these stones that were used to weigh down the sheaves, L'Rav Meir, who holds that anything that is utilized for a field, we're talking about the Mesaktin Afal Gav de Lo Machta. These stones have been prepared in a certain way in order to be placed on the sheaves, even though they haven't been placed on the sheaves yet, but they have been set up to be used that way. The Rabbanon is Dafka de Machton. You know what stones are sold with the field when they're actually placed on the wheat? Ula Domer Avonim Asdros Lagadir. Ula says that these stones refer to the stones that were used for the fence. So the Rav Meir, the Mesaktin Aval Gav Lo Sadrin, even though they haven't been lined up for the fence, they've been prepared for the fence. That's enough. The Rabbanon, who the Sadrin has to be all lined up. Then the Mishnah said, Vesakinim shebekerem shehem litzorcho. Sticks in a vineyard that are needed for the vineyard. Kinim ma'ibeditayu. How are they used in the vineyard? I'm in Rav Yana, the kinim amachulakin shemamidim tachas hagefanim. The tops of these sticks have been smooth, and the vines grow on these sticks. They lean on them. L'Rav Meir, the meshapin alfagav mukman. That means they've been polished and shaped, even though the grapevines have not been wound around them. L'Rabbanon is the mukman. You need the grapevines to be wound around the sticks, then the sticks would be sold at the field. Then the Mishnah says, "Vesatfua mechuberes lakarka," that the grain that is still in the ground, hasn't been harvested, is sold with the field. Afagav the matoy lemichtzid, it's time to harvest them. Doesn't make a difference, since in actuality they have not been cut. They still need the ground, and therefore it's sold with the ground. A row of sticks that have been set up sort of as a fence, that's fencing in a small area, less than a base rova. The avagav de'alimi, even though they're thick, but they're bottled to the field because it's a small area that they're fencing in. We said these little huts that have not been cemented to the ground. And you can move them, even though they're mobile, but since they haven't been cemented to the ground, it's not considered important enough on its own, and it's considered part of the field. A carob tree that has not been grafted, a young sycamore tree. Even though they're big and thick, but they're not a certain maturity, so they're seen as part of the field, because sometimes a tree would be sold in its own right, separate from a field. So these are bottled to the field. Okay, then the Mishnah said, the stones that are not needed for the field are not sold with the field. So the Rav Meir, these are the stones that are used to weight down the sheaves, but the lo metaknan, they haven't been prepared for that. And Rabbanan, the lo machtan, haven't physically been placed on it. They would be considered avonim that are not needed, and therefore they would not be sold with the field. Ula was the one who said that when we talk about stones, we're talking about that they've been lined up to make a fence. Rav Meir, the lo mesak, then they haven't even been polished or shaped at all to be used yet. And the Rabbanan, the lo sidrin, if they haven't physically lined them up as a fence, they would not be sold with the field. Sticks that are in a vineyard that are not needed for the vineyard. They haven't been smooth. You haven't wrapped the vines around it. Then they would not be sold. If the farmer has harvested the wheat and the wheat is lying on the ground, so it's not connected to the ground, growing, so that grain is not sold when you sell the field. Even though it's not floating in the air, it's resting on the ground. And you want it to be there because you want it to dry out a little bit. Doesn't make a difference. It's not sold with the field, even though it needs the field. If you have a fence that's surrounding a larger area, so that is not sold with the field. Even though the sticks themselves are very thin, but since it's encircling an area of the base rova, it's considered a reshus for itself, and it would not be sold. Not only is this considered a reshus on its own and is not sold, if you have a row of fragrant, perfumed flowers, which isn't even a base rova, is considered choshev enough on its own that it would not be sold when you sell a general field. It's got to have a special name. So then, ein in keres ima amrav papa v'hu the karla varda de planya. These are roses. Bill's roses, a certain name. Then the Mishnah said, if you have these huts that the watchman would sleep in that are made with cement or clay or something which fixes it to the ground, so it's choshev in its own right, would not be sold with the field. Avagav, the mechaber ba'ara, even though it's connected to the ground, but it's considered its own binyan, and it's not considered part of the field. V'lo is charva murkiv, not the carob tree that's been grafted. V'lo sadana shikma, an older sycamore tree. Avagav diktini, even though they're very thin, but because of their maturity, they're considered its own entity, and they're not sold with the field. So we asked the following question. Shaboy Rabbi Yezer. Rabbi Yezer asked, Malavnois shel psachim. If you have like a door frame made out of wood, Mao, is that sold when you sell a house or not? When it's cemented into the house with cement, there's no shaila. It's connected to the house. There's no shaila. They're just sort of hanging on by wood. My. So the Gemara says, take it, we don't have an answer. These door frames of windows, the wooden frames of windows, maybe it's just decorative, Davidi, and it doesn't go along with the house. Since they're connected to the house, we have to consider it as part of the house. Take it. You had bricks that were placed under the legs of a bed, so the bed wouldn't get damaged by moisture. If it's movable, very easily mobile, so then they would not be sold with the house. It's so heavy you can't move it. Teku. Again, in the last three theoretical questions that we asked, we have no response. That the carob tree that was grafted or the mature sycamore tree are independent entities, are not sold when you sell a general field. How do you know this? When Avram bought the Marsa Machpelah from Ephron, Vayakom ste Ephron, Asher b'Machpelah, it says, Asher lifnei mamrei hasadeh v'amara asher bo v'chol ha'etz asher basadeh asher b'chol gvulo saviv la'Avraham l'mikneh. Mi shetzarach l'gvul saviv. We're talking about a tree that is not recognizable. It's not an independent tree. You need a gvul around it. Yotzu elu she'ein shechin l'gvul saviv. You can recognize these trees on their own right. Amar Mashash Mikan is Meitzar Min HaTorah, is the concept of making borders for a field to know that this is mine and this is yours. a person sold a piece of land to his friend. Tzarech lemichtav lei, karnil chadiklin uta'alim v'hutzim v'tzitzim. Not only am I selling you the field, but the palm trees, the dates, and the leaves. Avagav, the chilokazav le'achikani. Even if he didn't write it, it would have been sold, because that's how we're learning in our Mishnah. Only the Charv HaMurkav and the Sadna Shikma is not sold, but these are. Afilachi Shufra Deshtara, it's an improvement of the star when you write it clearly. So there won't be machloikes. Armele, the seller says to the buyer, Aravidikli, I'm selling you the land and the palm trees. So then we see Chazina. Isla Dikli, if there are palm trees, all he has to do is give him two. Yoavle Tre Dikli. That's the minimum amount that would satisfy the word dekolim, palm trees, plural. The Ilesle, if there are no palm trees, Zavan Tre Dikli. He has to sell him two palm trees from another field. V'mishavdi Park Le Tre Dikli. If there are palm trees, but there's a lien to somebody else, he has to redeem at least two and give it to this buyer. However, if the seller says, Ara bedikli, I'm selling you land with palm trees, chazinan, bedikli yoevle. If there are palm trees on the field, he gets them. Ilav mekach tosu. You can reverse the deal and say no deal. You said it was a piece of land with palm trees. There are no palm trees. However, Ara bedikli, you use the phrase land of palm trees. So Leslie Dikli, in that phraseology, if there are no palm trees, it's not reversible. Why? The Chazil Dikli comment, he meant this is a piece of ground that potentially could grow palm trees there. It doesn't, it's lashon when you say Ara Dikli means you could plant palm trees. It doesn't mean I'm selling you land with palm trees. Amr Le, Lebar Midikla Planya. I'm selling you except for this and this palm tree. Chazina. Idikla Tava Ushir Shiara. If it's a good palm tree, he was keeping it for himself and he didn't sell it. Idikla Bisha, if it was a bad palm tree, Kol Shekain Hanav. He's keeping everything for himself. Amr Le, Lebar Me'ilmi. I'm selling you the land minus the trees. So Isle Ilni, if there are trees on the field, different types of trees, like olives and figs. So he sold him the field, the Bar Ilni. The guy who's buying the field doesn't get the trees. I'm selling the land without trees. Now, if there are palm trees on the land, Labar Medikli, he's selling him the land without the palm trees. He's keeping the palm trees for himself. Normally, you don't use the word ilan for a palm tree. Now, if you use the phrase, I'm selling you a piece of land without ilanois, and we go and inspect the field and isle gufni, there are grape vineyards there. He's holding back, he's not selling lebar megufni, even though a kerem is not called ilan. However, ilni v'gufni, if he says, I'm selling you the land without the ilanis, and there are trees and grapes, he's selling him at the land with the grapes, labar me'ilni, but he's holding back the trees that were there. If there's ilni v'dik, and he's saying, I'm selling you the land except for the trees, so he sold him the palm trees, labar me'ilni, except for the other trees. However, if he has gufni v'dikli, more complicated, he said, I'm selling you the land without ilonos, and we inspect the land and there's vineyards and palm trees. So there, it's more common to refer to a palm tree as a tree, lebar megufni. He's holding back the grapes for himself, and the palm trees go with the field. Amar Rav, If he sold the field and he says the trees are not there, Kol sha'odin lo b'chevel, if the tree is big enough that you can climb the tree with a rope to get the fruits down, Havishir, he's keeping that tree back for himself. Kol she'en lo olin b'chevel, if you can't climb the tree, lo Havishir, he's selling it with the land itself. Okay, stop here. Okay, tonight the Navi Shir is 8 o'clock. Tomorrow we're going to learn the Daf Yomi at 6:30 again.
Very
Okay.
good. Okay, good night.
Good night.